Another scientist with ties to America's space program has now joined the growing list of deaths and disappearances around the U.S. Michael David Hicks, a research scientist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, passed away on July 30th at the age of 59. But the cause of death was never made public, and no record of an autopsy being performed could be found. Specifically, Hicks was involved with the DART project, NASA's test to see if humans could deflect dangerous asteroids away from Earth. He also worked on Deep Space One mission, which tested new spacecraft technology that flew by a comet in 2001. While there have been no public allegations of foul play, Hicks's case marks the 9th person with ties to America's space or nuclear secrets who has died or mysteriously vanished in recent years, which has set off alarm bells among U.S. national security experts. These people nine have died or mysteriously disappeared over the past several years. Moreover, 3 of these scientists had close ties to Hicks, and all of them worked at JPL or participated in NASA missions. Monica Reza, JPL's new director of the Materials Processing Group, vanished without a trace in 2025, just months after beginning her tenure at the NASA lab. 2 other men with deep ties to JPL died recently, including a longtime co-worker of Hicks, Frank Mainwald, who died in 2024 at the age of 61, with even less public acknowledgement of his untimely passing. Meanwhile, astrophysicist Carl Grillmeyer, 67, was murdered on the front porch of his home on February 2026. The California Institute of Technology Research work was heavily supported by NASA's JPL. He was also personally involved with major space telescope missions led by NASA. So I could go on, but what do we have here? What do we have? What we have here is a bunch of people who have died horribly. I mean, that's awful. And they're all scientists. There's 9 of them over the past several years. They all have worked for JPL or work around JPL or work with or around NASA. But let me ask you a few things. What conclusions can be drawn from this? I'm only using this as an example because I've been talking to you this week about how to critically think. And this does not prove this correct and does not prove this to be wrong. It's just questions that need to be asked. So let's look at this. If you go through all of these things, there are some confirmed crimes with explanations. There was a Ohio murder-suicide. There was a scientist at MIT with a known suspect. Some of them are missing person cases, which happen regularly, even among scientists. Some are isolated homicides, tragic, but not inherently connected. And some, well, all of them have some connection to science, JPL, and NASA. Okay, so it's a mixed data set to begin with. Connected to NASA and JPL. Well, NASA and JPL does a lot of work, and most of it is with scientists. You know, one person worked directly. One person worked at Los Alamos. Well, there's thousands of employees and how many projects at Los Alamos. Another worked at MIT Fusion Research. Another one was in pharma with some DoD overlap. Pharma, fusion, space. I don't see the connection. That doesn't mean that there isn't a connection there, but nobody is showing the connection here. Okay? That's not a tight network. That's anyone who is near defense adjacent technology. That's not, they're all working on this one project. Okay? The clustering is expected. Okay? It's not suspicious. The story highlights Southern California, New Mexico, and Ohio. Well, those are all defense hubs. So those are places where lots of scientists are. And when you have lots of scientists, it makes sense that that's where scientists would die. you know? The fourth, institutional silence. Each of these say they didn't make a statement. Well, no, not everybody does. One guy was well known and he got a statement, and they said the other guy, who was not well known, maybe in the science world was, but he didn't necessarily get a big, send off. They didn't make a big statement. Universities and laboratories and government, they rarely disclose the details. Privacy, ongoing investigations, legal liability, phrases like passed away suddenly. That's standard. That's not evidence of concealment. Now, it could be, but it's not proof of anything. So I'm so frustrated by this story because I believe, how many conspiracy theories have come true? Lots of them. And so I'm not one to dismiss conspiracy theories, but it seems like we go out looking for some things, okay? And when we do that, we only sow more distrust with one another. So it's okay to look at this. It's okay to comment on it and follow the story. But did any of these individuals collaborate directly? Out of the 9, were they collaborating on the same thing? Is there any overlap in timelines on what they're working with, communications or travel? So far, no evidence, just 9 people who have died. Also, can we get a baseline? How many scientists have died in the last 5 years or several years of murder, suicide, random homicide, gone missing, separate criminal incidents? How many have died? How many overall? And then how many have died here that are not part of that? Or are all of those part of it? How many scientists normally die? Let me just say this. I looked something up, and I want to tell you something that could be true. It's definitely not, but I could make a case, okay? In the last 12 months, people who are related, many of them were friends of mine that have worked with me, are in the same industry, who are holding the same mission, many of them. They are on talk radio. In the last 12 months, I've had 8 people in my industry die who say the things that I'm saying. Now, we're under threat. We're trying to be silenced. But Gary Krantz, he was one of the original guys in syndication, premier radio networks. Gary Krantz, big guy. He died on January 21st. Jim Quinn, he was in Pittsburgh, a friend, a big influence on conservative talk. He was standing up during the Tea Party. He was standing up, when he died. He died March 30th. Matt Thomas. Now, this guy, he's public media, but he is a midday anchor, or was a Texas newsroom anchor. I'm from Texas. He's from Texas. We covered a lot of the same stories. He died at 41. I couldn't find an autopsy for him. WMAL, John Lyon. He was a broadcaster at WMAL, one of the most, and he's in Washington, D.C. Of course, Charlie Kirk, we know. Still wondering about how he died. Why was he killed? He was a syndicated host on talk radio through Salem. David Gold, longtime conservative talk radio host. He was heard in Denver and Tampa and Miami and Dallas. He died. These are all just since December. None of these are connected. But if I wanted to, I could that was just me Googling name conservative talk show host or syndicated radio host who have died. And I have a list of maybe 25 names. They all died in the last year. I just cherry picked people, James Dobson, focus on the family. What about him? Gary Burbank from WLW, a good friend of mine. Ron Gregory from WoWo, one of the first stations to pick this up. WoWo is important to my syndication. I know what WoWo is. They speak to the heart of the country. I can make this case. I bring this up because yesterday and the day before, I talked to you about be very, very careful about propaganda. Be very careful about, there's a lot of information out there, but you can take information and make it into anything you want. That doesn't mean that that's not true. All the stuff about talk radio, none of that's connected. The stuff on space, I don't think any of it's connected, but I can't tell you that. Why? Because I don't have the facts. And the absence of facts does not necessarily mean that they're hiding something. Sometimes, somebody dies, and out of courtesy to the family, they don't talk about, how they died or anything else. It's just that sometimes is standard. Now, with that being said, there are things going on in space that should concern you. So let me talk about something that we know is real that's happening in space. So we have Anna Paulina Luna on with us in a second, and she may be a believer, and she may have more information to share with us on these scientists, but she's also looking for the government to release 46 UFO or UAP videos. The deadline came and gone yesterday. We're going to ask her what comes next and why she's on this. But Jason, you want to blow up my theory?
I can't help it, Glenn. You know how my brain works. Let me attempt to blend the stories, but use your analogy. So let's say if 8 of those radio people are all talk radio shows, and they're all kind of conservative in line. So they all have a connection to maybe conservative talk radio. Let's say of those 8, 4 of them all went missing the exact same way. So they're not dead, but 4 of them are just missing. They're just gone. Nobody knows. They all went for a hike or something, or they just walked out and just left their homes and just poof, they were gone. Would you say, okay.
Out of the 9 for space, there are not 4 that just went missing, are there?
4 of them just went missing going for a walk.
Okay.
It's the weirdest thing ever.
Wait. Where do they live? See, I'm not. I want you to know, Jason. I am not, and I'm sorry if I framed it this way. I'm not saying this isn't true. I'm saying you need more information. For instance, where did they go missing? How many people go missing in that area? For instance, I went missing on a hike. I went into the woods on a hike. Well, am I doing that in Florida, or am I doing that here in the mountains? Because I got mountain lions, and I can be dragged up into a cave and eaten by a mountain lion. Is it normal? What is the rate of other people going missing in that area? Now, when you have all that information, it might be true. It might be something to look into. I'm just saying you can't. There are so many real things that we know and we can do something about. This is one of those things you keep on the back burner and you keep watching. You just keep watching. You don't fight over it. You don't condemn people and say, you're a monster because you don't believe it. You just don't understand. No. Continue to watch it, find more information, and then when you have more information, then you can start convincing people. So I'm not condemning anybody for following it at all. I'm just saying, don't demonize people, because they don't believe in it, because you don't have enough facts yet. You don't.
Yeah, I 100% agree that I think the lack of information is I'm more than anything, I'm playing devil's advocate, because the information we don't know is so wild. But even more on that, 3 of those cases, to answer one of your questions, 3 of them happened in the same state, in New Mexico. 3 of the 4.
Okay. So that's a very damning stat. Let's drill deeper on that. That's a very damning stat, or could be. Were they working on the same project? You get that stat along with the 3 disappear in the same state. Were they working on the same project? Not just the same place, If we had two people die in our place of business, that doesn't mean that somebody's trying to kill them or kidnap them if they just disappeared, because one could be working on something entirely. One could be an accountant and has nothing to do with what's the air product. The other person could be an on-air person. Why are they connected? Why would you say that's a trend if they just disappeared? Yes, it's a weird coincidence, but that doesn't mean somebody's targeting them. Do you see what I mean? You need to have something else that is also holding them together other than their place of business, or that they're both scientists, or they're both working on things with space. Of course they're working on things with space. They're working with NASA and JPL. It's not like they're making crayons.
Yeah, and some of the, which makes it even more weird are I guess just hard to put them all together. Not all of them are working on space. Like 2 of them were from Los Alamos, but they were working on nuclear research. So maybe kind of similar, but they're all getting kind of clumped into the one thing.
Right. And that doesn't mean this isn't true. It just means you have to go a step further to make the case, because they are not directly related. That's thousands of employees at Los Alamos. Thousands. Is that unusual for 2 to die in a several-year period? I don't know. Do more work.
Thank you for thinking for yourself and being part of a movement, because that's really what all of this is. If you want the full story, you want to go deeper, go to blazetv.com/Glenn. Go there right now, sign up, no interruptions, just the truth, uncensored and unfiltered. Don't just watch, take a stand. And I'll see you over there in a minute.